folks. Got another tutorial real quick today. Um, if you're familiar with the platform, one of the things that we have had is product revenues, and largely that's just been delivered via either you can look at single well and see revenue GPT depending on state, New Mexico, Texas, and North Dakota. North Dakota no GPT, but the other two have them. Um, and it's associated with the least produced volumes, and in Texas that can be weird because of allocations, things like that. So I include the least oil and least gas in that table so you can get an idea of things like shrink and NGL yields. Um, and then I have another app that allows you to kind of look at single leases and kind of look at the individual one and just export it to CSV if you're a premium customer, or if you're on the API, you can just go download it all whenever you want. Um, uh, all well and good, but I found myself at times wanting to do a full company kind of look at overall pricing, and maybe it's uh, Diamondback or something like that, and you want to get an idea of like overall pricing at a certain time period, and compare that to what you're seeing from their financials, so you can get their NGL costs and try to back into what NGL yields or stuff like that. So I just thought it might be have a good aggregate visual of that data for premium subs so that they can actually do a little more high level analysis that is beneficial. So I'm just going to work through an app that we built called Price Realization. And that's just taking that data and allowing you to visualize it a little bit better and compare it to WTI and Henry Hub. And often when I talk about like what is my view of what AFE leaks is obviously CapEx. But my background is largely valuations my entire career. And two things that were always very important when you're modeling cash flows or are that upfront capex because it's so expensive. That's your biggest cost, right? Um, but then also what is your differentials and your shrink and your NGL yields look like? Those are two of the hardest ones to get. I mean, the third one is LOE, which is you can kind of swag it a lot of times, but it would be great to have LOS data at some point for that perspective. But at the very least, we got two of those three components to kind of get really, really good granular looks at actual well economics. I'll just walk through real quick. Price realization app. What this is going to do is go look through our database, any lease that has pricing data, and say we want to go look at, I mentioned maybe Diamondback earlier. So let's just not even look at county. We'll just look at Diamondback. Um, what you'll see is start date, end date. I think most of the product data only goes through September right now. We'll have a refresh to go through October, November here pretty soon. And then maybe I'll go back to like 2022 or something on this. And then you'll have, group views. So you can select several operators to compare operator pricing and shrinks and GL yields or whatever if you want, or you can look at the county view for a specific operator like Diamondback, I guess. Maybe we'll do that for the first one. And then you can adjust this to be quarterly, annual, or monthly. Quarterly is interesting because you could go and pull, like I said, Diamondback's Q3 2025, I think was 1715 or something like that on NGL realizations. And what you'll see within this data is New Mexico reports their NGLs on an MCFE basis. North Dakota is on a barrel basis, and then Texas is whatever the operator decides. So there's no clear answer on what the actual conversion rate is. So you kind of have to use your knowledge of what pricing is to back into what NGL yields would be. So there's kind of like the workflow you'll work through, and I'll show you kind of what that means a little bit. So if we look at Diamond for example, there's depending on the lease, they report it either on a BTU or a process basis. If you want to kind of get a good idea of what shrinks and NGL yields are, I would say go look at the processed gas one and try to get an idea from there. So if we do a search real quick on just theirs on the county level, and I'll switch it just to operator level, you'll see you can look at NGL or oil pricing over time, and I can look at a column chart and you'll see the WTI over that time period as well. You can look at all these other metrics, percent of WTI, what your dollar diff is over time, GPT costs for this. It's coming up a little bit in some states. Gas, what they're getting at the wellhead, percent of Henry Hub, shrink for these leases. So I guess average shrink is about 33% off 33% is processed to create NGLs in this situation, or some is lost to lease use and things like that. But generally, you're trying to back into what the full economic stream is. And then gas plus NGL GPT. This is dollar per gross lease, gross gas produced. So I typically would always model whatever processing charges to create NGLs plus gathering and stuff into $1 per MCF basis. So that's kind of what I'm representing here. And it's also more helpful because you really don't know these units on the NGLs half the time. And then you see this NGL per unit comparison. Let me just move off the county look real quick so I can kind of show you what I was referring to earlier. On this, you'll see 377 for Q3 for Diamondback on these processed gas. Like I said, 17 something, I think was like 4.5 conversion. So if I just do that conversion real quick, that's going to up the NGL dollar per barrel and then recalculate the NGL yield for that period. So what you could do is kind of go through and look at, you grab their realization during that period, and then you can go back into the NGL yield they were getting for that period. And that's what you're seeing here. So it's adjusted the NGL price to 17 here, and then like that would be 25% of NGL or WTI, and then a 177 NGL yield. It depends on what leases are going into it, and also, all those leases that are sold on a BTU basis would have an impact too. So it's not, if you probably won't get an exact match unless the company reports all of their stuff on a NGL processing basis. So there's some stuff you got to do to kind of back into what NGL stuff is, but you can kind of see the value of this stuff because you can benchmark. Like if I selected more than one operator, let's, I don't know, Exxon, for example, in Texas, and maybe I'll just do some Permian counties, so it's like more or less like for like Martin, and we'll do Glasscock real quick. So say I do want to do this view, I'll do quarterly view by operator for processed gas. And on this one, it'll fetch both of them, but you're going to be benchmarking by the both of them here. So oil dollar per barrel, it just should be looking on the operator view. Oh, well, I didn't filter those. That's why it took a little while. I didn't filter Exxon and Diamondback on this one. There we go. Let's give it a second to think here. All right, and then see, we've got the oil pricing comparison. They're basically like for like. Percent of WTI. You can get what they're getting at the wellheads. There are some differences here. It looks like Diamondback's doing a little bit better on Exxon on just raw price realization. But then we could look at what are they getting on NGL per unit. Obviously, one is reporting closer to probably what probably a different conversion rate. It all kind of depends on also the products that are feeding through on the NGLs. It's a very complicated mess. So I think what you need to do is kind of take into account what you know about the company's price realizations, things like that, to back into shrinks and NGL yields. But you can kind of see there's quite a bit of value here in kind of just realizing this stuff over time and plotting it out, and even from a valuation perspective. Or if you just want to see raw data values, just go to either the single well, the lease, product revenues app, product revenues right here. We'll get just the line item data, but yeah, that's kind of the summary of what we've done here. We might build out some more functionality to this, but this is the initial go at it, and I think it'll be pretty useful to folks. If you have any questions, just email me at bd@afeleaks.com. But other than that, you guys have a great one. We'll talk to you later.